pretty well during the game. I thought Munster handled them pretty well from a defensive perspective, shut them down physically, won a whole lot of collisions, set piece, did a good job limiting the scope of what they were able to do there. Managed Connacht's kicking game, which I think was a huge factor in their win over Leinster a week before. And, like you said, they're 16 points to 3 with the, coming into the last 5 minutes. You think, look, that's a pretty unassailable lead. But then things just started to get out of hand. And it's like you look for what's the moment that can kind of swing this and kind of, turn a game that's very much in control to something that's way kind of out of control. I think it was the yellow card, Rory Scannell's yellow card. And I get it. I get why he was looking to go after the ball there and make a big turnover, and get Munster rolling. He's coming off the bench, wants to make an impact. For me, I'm thinking maybe you leave that one. As in you can kind of see that the way that the breakdown has been going, Munster have been conceding a fair number of penalties over the last, for the previous few minutes up until that. Maybe leave that. Maybe don't leave that breakdown entry. We won the collision. Stick with that. But it ended up being a yellow card. And from there, it just kind of like through a mixture of losing control of the game and a bit of bad luck, it ended up with a lot of defensive pressure, because again, the reason why I say luck is Connacht scored their try, were good value for it, I think, in the moment. Munster kicked off with 40 seconds left in the game?
Yeah.
Kicked deep. We're hemming Connacht in down there, and if Jack Carty's left leg doesn't slip, that's not a high tackle penalty from Tyke Byrne, because he was always going low. If Jack Carty doesn't slip, that isn't a penalty, and Connacht don't have that opportunity to launch off the lineout. And when you're down to 14 men, and you've already conceded a few penalties now for breakdown entries, you kind of have to leave those breakdowns alone. So you're dealing with a whole lot of quick ball from Connacht after that lineout. And then you start ending up in a situation then where it becomes quite difficult to stop. Billy Holland had a fantastic tackle, try saver, match saver perhaps. And then it ended up in the very end with Connacht going for a 5-meter scrum against 13 men and somehow coming away with the wrong decision. I think I understand what the thinking behind it was. I think what they wanted was to go and, we'll get a try in a central area so the conversion is really easy, rather than let's go all the way out to the edges and get right over in the corner and have a difficult kick to win it. I think that's probably what maybe the thought process was there. But whatever happened, I think, Munster fronted up really well. The close range defence had been really good all night. And I think that, Tyke Byrne's play there right at the end, 2 really good shots. He was outstanding and ended up winning the game for Munster. But Connacht will be kicking themselves. They should have won it. You look at the possession that they had at the end, the position where they were against 13 men. They really should have come away with a win there. And if they had, Munster would be looking for answers as to how the hell did it get out of control so quickly.
Yeah, and I suppose, look, you just have to look at the table now. Munster played 9, won 8, and on 37 points. Connacht have a 5-4 record from their 9 games and standing on 27 points. So 11 clear of Connacht. Then you have Scarlets on 24, having played 10. So I don't think Scarlets, Blues, or anyone below Connacht really had a prayer's chance of catching Munster as it was. I think that has, and I think they've actually copper fastened that final spot now. But there are some interesting subplots in that, we've seen the fixture chaos that has come with the postponement of the suspension of the fixtures for the Champions Cup and the possibility that Leinster might get slotted in there. And if you look at at Leinster bouncing back and getting that win over Ulster, you now have to look that Leinster have very much taken, I suppose, control of Conference A back in their own hands with 8 wins from 9, 41 points, 2 games in hand on Ulster, 5 points behind them. And, if they were to beat Munster, it would close the gap, you'd imagine, to it would close the gap to a point. If not, we certainly wouldn't hope that it would draw them level with Ulster, but it could, if they were to beat Munster, it could conceivably take them to within a point of Ulster with a game in hand. And when you consider how they've been faring up against some of the other opposition, it would be hard to see Leinster dropping any points there. But I suppose in a roundabout way, Tom, Leinster still has a fairly big weight of importance attached to it, in that if Munster are to avoid Leinster in a Pro 14 final, then it would be nice to kind of give them a few things to think about by putting them under pressure to secure the top spot in Conference A.
Yeah, look, I think from a Munster perspective, they'd be looking at any Leinster game, which, there's talk of it coming in the next 2 weeks to get that fixture rescheduled for them. Munster will want to deal with Leinster full on, full strength 23 against full strength 23, and to just have a cut off them. I think the way Munster have been playing this year so far, they will want to match themselves against the best, and the best is still Leinster right now. You look at the way that, especially in that opening, the opening 10 or 15 minutes of the second half against Ulster, that's when Leinster really, really turned it on, and they're missing a few guys, they were missing Dan Levy, James Lowe, they're still missing Ty Furlong. You look at that and you go that again was a pretty impressive demonstration as to where Leinster are at the moment. And from a Munster perspective, I'm sure they'd be looking at that game and going, look, that they would had a whole lot of confidence going into that game in St. Stephen's Day. Thinking they would have had with the big win over Claremont away, looking to try and back that up again with a home game against Leinster. I think that both sides would really, really like that game, and I think both sides would kind of like to see where they're at against each other to a certain extent. When you look at Conference A, I think Munster, if they were to look at two teams and go, look, I certainly think we'd beat this team over that team, I think you'd say that might be Ulster at the moment. But at the same time, I think Ulster are quite strong. They've certainly improved this year. But I would say that, from a Munster perspective now, looking at that Leinster game, if it can happen in the next couple of weeks, that would be a really good level check to see where Munster are at, after that Pro 12 or Pro 14 semi-final a couple of months ago, to see how the development has gone since then, and to kind of just get a level check really to see where they're at, see where Leinster are at the moment, and just kind of have a bit of a straightener and see what happens.
Yeah, and I suppose look, the fact that those European Champions Cup and Challenge Cup games have been temporarily suspended. I think we've seen the LNR, the French league, have already penciled in fixtures, domestic fixtures for those weekends. I suppose really, Tom, it is now about if cross-border travel is suspended, it's really about maximising the calendar for every week that we can, so that there are, if we don't play one competition one weekend, but we have an opportunity to play games in another competition, then I think we should very much grasp it and take it. And if that means refixing Munster, Leinster in those kind of windows, then let's go for it.
Yeah, I think it would make sense. You look at the Gallagher Premiership, I think they've taken the opposite approach. They're having just 2 weeks off. Maybe they feel that is for the best for them. I think that if it's possible to run the cancelled Munster-Leinster game, that is certainly something worth looking at. You look at some of the other games that may possibly go ahead that were cancelled. It might ease things up a little bit, because looking at the schedule there, it looked like there was going to be a whole lot of games during the test window. A lot of disruption there as well. I think it would suit everybody if they could kind of clear up a little bit of that backlog with some of the ones that were called off. Maybe there's a scope to do Glasgow, Edinburgh, which was called off there last weekend. Maybe they can do that this weekend. Look, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think that, like I said, I think it would be something, 2 weeks off. This is usually the kind of the prime time of the year when it comes to the Champions Cup. So I think it'd be good to get that, get a few games in and keep momentum going. You want to look at it as a sort of a Ireland trial, a kind of to see where people are at like that. I think it might be a good one. I think from the Pro 14 perspective, looking at how compressed the rest of the season is looking like it's going to be, like you look at the end of, I think we're looking to finish up at the end of March. I think if any 2 weeks they get where there's a bit of blank space, I think that would make a whole lot of sense to make sure that, again, there's a bit of player welfare. You're making sure you're not compressing too many games into too many weeks. I think it might be a good idea to use these 2 weeks that they were going to be playing anyway, and to try and get those games done.
Yeah, I understand that, Tom. And I suppose, look, it is those games and those windows, like you said, huge opportunities to try and get those fixtures, or to maximize the weekends and the windows that we do have, because with the pandemic and how it is developing, it's I suppose we've kind of seen across all the different sports, it's about being able to adapt to the opportunities that you do have while making common sense or making the right decisions from a public health point of view. And I think, the days of calendars being set in stone and fixtures being set in stone, it's far from ideal, but teams are just gonna. It is, I suppose, once it's the same for everybody and everyone's on a relatively level playing field, which I think for the most part we are. I think it's just a case of, guys, look, we're just gonna have to get on with this grit and bear it for another season or half season or whichever way it pans out, and we'll get back to normal preordained schedules when we can.
Yeah, look, this year, I think, was it Johan van Graan said it, and he's been saying it all year, really. You have to be adaptable. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, as in, a game can get cancelled. Like, Glasgow and Edinburgh was cancelled, like a few hours before kickoff? And that was because of the weather. So, like, you just really have to just take each week and just go, look, whatever's going to happen is going to happen. There's no such thing as it being set in stone. Like, even for myself, for matches coming up, normally I would be looking at games a number of weeks in advance. I'm not even bothering doing that now, because you know when these games are going to be called off, so you could just end up wasting your time. So, like, again, you look at this, like the Claremont thing, Munster, we're probably going to be looking over the last week or two, checking in on Claremont, seeing what they're about, making plans for that. And now, look, who knows when they'll play Claremont, or if they'll play Claremont, because I'm not sure where those Champions Cup games go. I'm not sure where they actually can manage to fit them in, especially when they're looking to play a double-legged quarter-final. It's all up in the air. But look, you just can't take anything at the moment that it's like that anything is definitely going to happen. They don't know. They think the Six Nations is going to happen. We don't know. It's just one of those things you just have to roll with the punches, and hopefully by the time it's all said and done, everybody's still standing, everybody's still somewhat solvent, and they can go back to getting as many games and as many gates as they want.
Yeah, and look, I suppose you'd have to look at that Six Nations as well. I know Bernard Laporte coming out today saying no need to be alarmed, and France have named their panel for the Six Nations. So, they do seem to be pretty determined to forge ahead with the Six Nations on that basis, you'd imagine, with it probably kicking off in February. So, they seem to be kind of cautious around it, but at the same time relatively certain that they will be able to get the Six Nations games played. I suppose, look, you have to look at it too. It is a smaller playing pool. It's probably a more controlled environment than the club games. So if any competition or tournament was to have a chance, it would be the Six Nations. But again, like we said, Tom, it's these situations are fluid at best.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think when you look at the Six Nations, it is controllable, because you'll have your match day 23 plus a few traveling reserves, perhaps your coaching staff, the attached people, rather than 10 or 12, or 14 teams, from France going to the UK, coming back into from the UK, going over to Ireland, coming back in from Ireland as well. Because we're not exactly, in a good place with COVID at the moment either. So you're looking at that and thinking, it's just easier for the Six Nations to go ahead, and it's, I would say, incrementally more important for the unions to get that tournament done. Plus, it's that little bit of time in the future as well. I think there's a hope that maybe things will have calmed down a little bit by, the middle of February, and kind of hope from there that they can start building and getting those games done, and then being in a position come March, April, where maybe the COVID numbers have gone down, maybe you can get crowds back in, maybe limited numbers. That's the hope.
Yeah, speaking of hope, and Paul O'Connell joining the Irish backroom staff as forwards coach this week, Tom, brings a huge amount of experience, has played at the very highest level, in some of the biggest games for Ireland, and also I suppose for the Lions, although I think I looked at his Lions record, only 7 caps. I think 2013 was dogged by injury. And he did seem to have no luck with regards to injury with Lions tours. But what is that going to mean for the Irish setup? Is the line out the primary area where we're going to see Paul O'Connell's influence. I mean, it was something that he ran for Munster and for Ireland, and you know, we know his line-out capabilities and prowess. Is it just about line-out, or is it a broader kind of scope for Paul O'Connell? I know that Easterby is moving to defence-only coach now, in the coaching ticket. So what do you expect from this move?
I think with O'Connell, they'll have him focus on line out maul, line out defence, maul defence, and it makes sense. You know, he's a guy who's an iconic player. Look, there's no getting away how iconic Paul O'Connell is. You go to any rugby fan going and ask him, do you know who Paul O'Connell is? They know who Paul O'Connell is. He transcends the Irish game, you know, and you look at hiring him as a relatively inexperienced coach. I mean, look, he is a relatively inexperienced coach. It's not without risk. But if you would look at anybody who can make it work, it would be Paul O'Connell. So, like, you look at what the players will look at him. They will come in and they will play their guts out for him. He then will have to bring technical expertise. He will have to, you know, the pressure of the test game. He will have to come in and analyze opposition, line-out coaches, forward coaches, what they're doing, have his own work then subject to analysis and deconstruction by opposition coaches and analysts as well. It'll be a big step up from the last time he was involved in the pro game, which was with Stade Francais, which didn't really work for a number of reasons that were, you know, from what you hear, nothing at all to do with Paul O'Connell. But you look at that and go, I can see exactly the way that it would work, but it isn't without risk. Because again, when you look at iconic players at times, I think when they come into a coaching situation, the general fan population look at them and judge them on their record as players and go, well, he was an iconic player, world class. He will be the same as a coach. I think there will be a bit of bedding in time that will have to come in. He will have to get his ideas across to the players in a relatively short period of time. They're going to have, I'm not sure if they've had Christmas camps or anything around. I don't think we've heard about them. This time around, they will have a bubble for the Six Nations. So they'll need a fair bit of time there to get what plans they're doing. How much are they going to change? How much are they going to keep? Little bits and pieces he's going to look to try and bring in. But like I said, it isn't without risk. But I think that the players will want to play for Paul O'Connell. They will want to play their guts out for him. And look, when you look at the respect he has universally here, not just as a player, but like he was always regarded as a deep thinker about the game, especially in the forward aspects of it, the line-out aspect of it. I can see how it would be successful, and it's something I'm really looking forward to seeing, what kind of approach he brings in, what kind of schemes he implements, and how he does in up against very tough opposition in France, in England, in Wales, who I think can only get better from where they are as well. Look, when you look at the club game, it's every week. And I think he mentioned a couple of months ago in the press that the grind of every week with club rugby wasn't really something that he was mad about. With the international game, there's less grind, but the pressure and the scale is bigger. So that'll be something. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts. Because you look at a player and you wonder what kind of coach they're going to be. I think Ronan O'Gara has shown that he went the long way around. You know, he went through Racing. I think he was a kicking coach, defense coach, ended up going to the Crusaders, back now with La Rochelle and doing fantastically well there as well. It can work. I think it can work for Paul O'Connell as well. I'm very interested to see how it'll go.
Yeah, same as Tom. Munster's next game is, as we speak, their next game is scheduled for the 31st, which I think is the refixed game with Benetton. Hard to see a game scheduled for the weekend of 16th or 17th at this stage. It's probably too short notice, but you'd imagine that there will be one on the 24th if we're to avail of that window. Tom, I know it's hard to plan your content, but give us an old hint to us what might be coming up on the Patreon page.
Well, this week, I'm going to be looking at Munster's strike moves off the lineout. I'm going to be looking at their last couple of games against Clermont, against Ulster, and last time out against Connacht. I'm also going to be just kind of seeing where Munster are at the moment, considering that we've got a little bit of break, just to see where they are after roughly around half a season in both tournaments. and just kind of building from there. That's all going to be on patreon.com/3redkings for as little as €2 a month.
Excellent stuff, Tom. Thanks for joining us this evening, and we will catch up with you again, hopefully, once we have some information on Munster's fixtures, and we'll